Hello and welcome to episode 8 of Pardon Your French. I am Stephanie Lauren and
I am Vanessa Sherlock.
So today we've got a really random but very French subject matter to talk to you about. And Vanessa is the oracle on this. I have no clue. So basically I'm going to interview Vanessa and pick her brains about septic tanks. So for the of you that are watching that don't know what a septic tank is, Vanessa?
It is a non-mainstream's way of dealing with your toilet and kitchen waste, basically.
See, right there, I didn't even know your kitchen waste went into it.
Yeah, so all of the pipe work that you have inside your house that would normally, like if you lived in a town or a city, all of that water and shit and everything has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And when you live out in the middle of the countryside, there are no main drains. And so what happens is you have another type of system that uses a natural bacteria that digests all of these harmful things and disperses the water out back into nature, but after it's been filtered through several different mechanisms. So yeah, so your face is like, oh my gosh, that's disgusting. It is disgusting because we're talking about poo. But yeah, like also all the water. So the water that goes down your drain in your kitchen, the water that goes down the drain in your shower, in your sinks.
I just thought it was like a poo tank. I didn't even, never even crossed my mind that that's where like your shower water goes.
Yeah, so traditionally, they would have septic tanks, and they're not actually even called septic tanks anymore. So a septic tank was literally just a tank, and your toilet line would go into it. Once that filled up, there's like a water pipe that comes out, and then all the loose water from that would flow out into nature, and then all the gray water, which is not as dirty, like your shower water and your kitchen water, that would just literally just flow out into the garden. But now with detergents and things like that, when you think of dishwasher detergents, liquid, all that stuff, they realize that microplastics and things like that aren't the best thing to just go flowing off into your farmyard where you might have food growing or animals or people, like if there's hills nearby and things like that. Yeah. So yeah, in French they call it assainissement non collective, and assainissement literally just means like sewage, basically.
Right.
Yeah. So if you live in a village and you are connected up to main drains, you would be on assainissement collectif, which means it's collected, and the commune then has a way through their series of sewage treatment to clean that water and waste, just like sewage treatment plants in any community that doesn't dump it straight into the ocean.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so when you live out in the countryside, you have a system that it would be considered now they call them Fosse Septique. So all water. A fosse that is just means like a trench or a hole. So a Fosse Septique is a hole where all the water goes.
Right, okay, so it's like a collection point.
Yeah.
So when I bought this house, obviously I looked around it for like 10 minutes and then went, yeah, we're buying it. And then went back to England, and then all these reports, like DPE reports, started coming through, and I was like, the frick is a Fosse tank?
Yeah.
I had no idea. Obviously in England you just flush the loo and walk away, don't think twice about it, right?
Yeah.
So then I was like, oh my god, and obviously it's all in French, obviously, so I'm like having to translate stuff, and I'm like, but even in English this doesn't make sense, you know what I mean? And I think if you don't read a report in French, you're screwed, basically. You need to find somebody that can translate that from French into genuine English terms that you can understand, because I was reading it and I was like, I'm at such a loose end as to what as to what this is.
Yeah.
And I was told that the Fosse didn't conform, but I was like, yeah, but what would it conform to? Like, I had not a clue. Typical Brit. And so then I went online and did a little bit of research online. And from what I could understand, most fosses in France don't conform, and that you can get a fine and things like that. So then I was like, oh my God. So I started messaging my estate agent, and I was like, what am I going to do? And she was like, well, don't worry. You'll just get like a fine if you get a fine.
I'm trying to sell you the house, so if this could cost me the house sale, I'll tell you it's fine. No big deal.
I think it's just over here. It's like, well, all houses are old, all Fosse tanks are old. It's just one of those things. But then it wasn't until so I made an offer on the house, and then I got the compromis back, and I was reading through it, and I was like, oh, hang on a minute. But the offer that I put on was what I want to pay for the house. But written into that was the offer was accepted on the proviso that I do the foss, almost like the offer of like 16 grand less, I think it was, and was to cover the foss. And I was like, no, that wasn't why I made that offer. That's what to me the house was worth. Nothing to do with the foss. And then it wasn't until we got into the notair's office and I'm reading through it and I'm like, fucking hell, they're saying that I have to do this foss within a year. And I was like, Jesus, wet. Like,
yeah. So, I mean, this is a really common thing. So my husband installs septic systems. So, systems of assainissement non collective. And he can connect up to main strains as well, but it's just not a super common thing because people who live in villages generally have had that done when Stefan was saying that they've installed a main strain system. So all the houses, basically, they're obliged to connect up. And you'd want to connect up because it saves you having to get emptying conforming.
okay.
So, this is something that like I would always recommend to people when they have this situation, because you, not knowing anything, you could have been taken advantage of in a big way. And like you said, okay, well, I got 16 grand. Well, they're saying they gave you 16 grand off of the asking price because the FOS didn't conform. And that's based on they've gone out, presumably gotten a quote, but you might not have seen that. So if
I never saw any quote to do
exactly
a FOS replacement.
So if you're in a situation where you are looking to buy a property and you learn that the FOS does not conform, you are more than welcome to go get a quote from somebody for that system. And it is very specialized. So Simon likes to go out. He likes to see the property because sometimes it has to do with access, because you're going to end up needing, 20 tons of gravel or whatever delivered. So you need to have the space to be able to do that. He needs to see, you're going to have a bunch of dirt that comes out of that hole and it's going to have to go somewhere. Does he have to take it away to a déchetterie? Does he have to landscape it in? So all these things affect the cost. So saying, it's going to be between 12 and 15,000 euros for a FOS, that's just a bog standard basic FOS. Well, your system might not be like that. Based on what your system was before, there are situations where you might not have to replace the entire system. You might be able to just rehabilitate the things that aren't conforming. So a FOS system is usually made up of a tank that holds all of the waste, and then a filter bed that takes the dirty water and filters it out. So it's either a sand filter or trenches, but it has to go through several different layers of aggregates so that the water is considered clean. Obviously not for drinking, but there has to be certain distances from walls. It has to be certain distances from trees, from fence lines, all things like that as well. And so if you're going to have a house that you don't know anything about a system, having somebody come out and give you a quote would be helpful.
Yeah.
If you don't have the ability to do that, say the owners are like, oh no, we'll do it, then you can insist on them getting a quote or several quotes and then taking the average of that amount off of the asking price. So you are not obliged to just take their word for it'll cost 16,000 to do. And it maybe when they got that quote, it did, but
time
now.
has got us 4 years later, and I actually didn't even twig when they talk about Fosse. So I've actually got two.
Yeah.
So I've got one for the main house, which isn't big enough.
Yeah.
For the amount of bedrooms that I've got. And then I've got one for the G. I mean, we didn't even know where the cover was. Like, to get into it, it took us, forever. And then I had not a flipping clue that I then had to find a farmer to then come and collect the waste. So you have to budget that in. I mean, how long would you say on paper a fosse should be emptied before it needs to be emptied? Every 5 years?
It depends. So I'm under the impression that your G likely is old enough that it is just a septic tank. So somebody's connected all of your pipes up to a tank that was designed only for poop to go into it. So it'll fill up really fast because it's not a volume of water from
once a year. I have it.
Yeah, so once a year seems like realistic based on what your system is. If you have a proper septic system, even if it's undersized, so the one for the main house is probably a Fosse Septique, I would say, I mean, realistically, it should be every 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
But they also have integrated filters now, so you're supposed to take those out once a year and jet wash them.
Yeah.
There's a lot of components to a septic system. The other thing is you can't just get any random person to empty your system. It's regulated by the government.
Yeah.
So there's a list of people who are qualified to take it. The waste has to go to a specific place. So that's then taken, like, for us, it's to Paraga.
I thought they just sprayed it across the fields. And I was like, that's human waste.
Yeah, that's how diseases spread.
Yeah.
We were joking about this at the golf club. I was like, remember cholera outbreaks? No, so they're not. It's heavily regulated what they're supposed to be doing with that waste.
It's not something I ever think about, but I guess for you and your husband, so you think about a lot.
Well, it's part of life, and you think about all the problems that they have with city sewage systems, like blocking up and things like that, because people never think about what they're putting down in the drain. Right. And there are, these systems are quite sensitive. So you don't want to put grease down the drain.
I'm very good at that now because I've got a block in my drain pipe.
Yeah.
And I was like, and which she shouldn't put down anyway, even in England. But yeah, so I'm very good. I make sure I've got a little pot.
And it's like, wipes that, like, there's supposedly no such thing as flushable wipes.
No, necessity products, everything like that.
Yeah, things that, like, so I grew up on a septic system. So we lived out in the woods, and so I was taught these things from a young age. You hit a certain age and your mom is like, nothing goes down that toilet. You're like, oh,
yeah.
And you only learn later that, like, most people just think anything can, you flushing a t-shirt down the toilet. Yeah, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Where do you think that goes?
People don't think, and I probably am one of those people that didn't really think anything of it until I moved here, and then I was like, damn.
If you live out here as a part-time homeowner, so if you're like a second homeowner, you actually have to put sachets in your septic system before you leave, so that it keeps working. Otherwise, if there's nothing, if that's not going down there, it doesn't keep working, and it starts to smell.
My God, I have been in a property where you could walk in their front door and one of their bedrooms en suite. The smell, it's like a dead body. Once you smell it, you never forget that smell. And they had to have the whole wooden flooring ripped up. Yeah. It's like something to do with the ventilation system or something in there to, like, them, I don't know, do something. Damn God, really big job.
Yeah.
And it cured the problem, but I think they had like 3 or 4 different people actually going to try and work it out before somebody just did. But the smell is
yeah, it's pretty bad. It's a pretty bad smell. But same thing, like all the drains in your house, because you're using those drains all the time, the traps have water in them.
Yeah.
They dry out, the gases can escape. It's just like, that's the reason we have water in our toilet, is to keep the smell from coming back up. When houses, this is the other thing about really old houses, between the toilet and the tank, somewhere in the walls, there is supposed to be a ventilation pipe that's inside to also have those smells extracted. And there's two ventilations in the septic system. So there's one that's done by your plumber when he's installing the plumbing inside the house, in the walls. And then there's another set of ventilations that is outside the house after the tank. And that is to release the gas that's coming off the end of the tank. And that helps reduce...
I see the big pipe up the size of my house.
Yeah.
Roof.
Yeah. And so those, you know, the rules have changed over the years. Like I was saying, your little Jeep one, the ventilation's only this big. So it's not letting enough out. Yeah. And so you end up having trapped gases and things. And it's a real health concern. Like you said, it smells like death. It's not good for you to be breathing it in. Yes, you know, it's dangerous.
But it's it's not going back in there. But I've heard this weird rumor, and I don't know if it's like a French myth about Fosse tanks, that French people, if it gets a bit of a smell, they put a raw chicken into the Fosse tank.
I've never heard that before.
Yeah.
That's disgusting, though.
I know.
But what are you, just like feeding the alligator living in there?
Yeah, or what? Almost like that, but it's almost to do with the bacteria.
Yeah, just to build it back up.
Yeah. It's but you can go to like Brico or Leclerc or any big supermarket and buy these little white sachets with the black, it's almost like black pepper to me.
Yeah.
That stuff in it, and then you just chuck it into the toilet, leave it for a little while, and then it will just over time just flush its way through the system.
Yeah.
And then it's almost like the pH and alkaline in your body. It will just, like reset it. So we didn't know when we needed to empty the tank, and we had one of our builder friends here, and he's like, "Have you not got a poo stick?" And I was like, "Sorry, what now?" I think it was like poo stick,
like a measuring stick. See how full it is.
Do I need to learn? And luckily, like I think it was like the week before, I'd cut 6,000 bamboo stems down in my garden, and I was like, "I have a great poo stick. I'll be right back." And I turned up with this massive. He went, "It's not that big, the tank, Steph." So you had to like cut it halfway down, and he stuck it in, and I was like, "Right, I'm just going to put the kettle on."
Yeah,
so I'll walk away. But yeah, there's lots of things to consider when you buy, and it's like even now when I go to the shop and I buy cleaning products for my house, especially like the I guess it would have been bleach back in the day that you put around the toilet and stuff. I always make sure I find like the really like the bright pink one because I like the colour. But it says, you can get the safe for Fosse Septique on it. So you have to be really careful with, what products you're using within your home that are okay for the environment. Like vinegar is so much better than, bleach.
Well, you're not supposed to use much bleach.
No.
But there's also, it's like, you've got to think about the volume of waste that's going down there. Like, if you're pouring a gallon of bleach into your toilet, that's going to destroy your system. You can use a bit of bleach. And once the bleach is used, like, I like to bleach with the, like, texture scrub for my porcelain sink.
Yeah.
So I like to do the bleach in there. But once it's been used in there and then diluted with water...
Yeah.
It's not going to kill my Fosse off.
Yeah.
It's not going to kill my 6,000 liters of poop tank.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. But it is, I think, as somebody English that moved here that's never had a Fosse system, it's those things. So if we've just moved here, you know what I mean? I know a few people that have just arrived and they're like, what do I need to use in my house? So I do recommend like more natural. And I have to say the supermarkets here are incredible. Like your bio range, and things like that, even like for clothes, for detergent, and things like that, rather than using like the harsh chemicals for your clothes. So it's all education and learning. Again, much why we're doing one of these podcasts.
Yeah, Simon had this client that there was a lot of back and forth. The government entity that's in charge of inspecting, and they're called. There's different that are in control of it. So in some regions, it's the Water Board, the SAUR. In some places, it's a bureau that's specifically just for looking at your Fosse. Like out here, it will be Lavalette to a drone, and they'll have a chalet office, and they'll have a few technicians that come out, and they verify, your installation. And so a lot of times they're working from non-existent records. So all they can do is take the lid off, stick the poo stick in, ask you how long ago you had it pumped out, things like that. And so this client that Simon was having all these back and forths with was asking a lot of questions. Fair play to him. It's important to ask questions. But he bought the place in 2001. He now wants to sell the place. He's made it larger, and he did install a small fosse to accompany the size increase. And he's going, we've never had a problem with our system. And I hear this all the time.
Yeah,
It works perfectly fine. It works perfectly fine. And we were like, in the garden where it's all soggy and the poo water is obviously coming up through the clay, and we're like, but no, your system isn't functioning properly. The inspectors come 3 times, and each time it's been more and more things that don't conform because the legislation changes.
Okay.
And so as it's getting more serious, because, the French government they're trying to do these environmental measures, and they're trying to make sure that they're not getting pollutants in the food and the water systems and all this stuff, especially like Stefan said, every year you're having much more serious situations with drought, and then much more serious situations with flooding. So we're not at the same water line that we've always kind of been in. Now the water line rises, and you can't have poo water in the drinking water as that happens. And so this client was noticeably disturbed because we had done this quote for them based on what we've been told to quote for by a third party that's controlled by the government, a Bureau des Études, that had come out and they do a soil test.
Yeah.
So they dig a bunch of holes, they take the soil, they pour a load of water into it, they figure out what different components the soil's made out of and how permeable it is for water to flow through. Because if the water, if it's on bedrock, water's not going to flow through that. If it's on clay, the water sits on top and doesn't go through. And so when you're putting dirty water in there, you need to have an extra layer of aggregate that water can filter through to be able end up being clean in the end.
So how much would you say a soil test costs?
So they're same again. It's regulated by the government, and there are only certain bureaus that are qualified to do it. So that increases the price. But I'd say 300 euros would be about
the average.
An average kind of price for it. And they come out, they look at the like macro of the land all around, where your house is. And then they zoom right in on what the actual land, where your property is. You actually get a lot of that information when you're doing your home purchase in a diagnostic. And then they decide based on the size of your property, the number of rooms, the number of bedrooms. It has nothing to do with the number of bathrooms you have.
Yeah, which is surprising.
Yeah, and then they do what they've started doing, I've noticed, is if you have a rental property, so say you have a 4-bedroom house, but you're going to rent it out, so each bedroom,
because we like 8 people,
they will go, oh, since this is going to be for the capacity of 8 people for a rental,
you need a
bigger tank. Yeah. Instead of saying, oh, it's only got 4 rooms, you only need 4,000.
Okay,
so we might say it's 8.
So if you're interested in, even buying a rental property here in France, you have to take that into consideration, and the cost of doubling the size of the tank, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And so, it all depends on where you live. So chalet, you are not required in this region, in the Charente, you are, in this area at least, not required to have a soil study. But in January of 2024, the Dordogne passed a law that now you are required to have a soil study. And it was because the Spank officials, technicians were coming out, checking systems, and then they were having a lot of these disagreements with homeowners about the size of their system and with installers about, oh, what should I install? I'm trying to help these people out or whatever. And Spank went, okay, we don't want to deal with this anymore, because if anything goes wrong, it then becomes the bank's responsibility. And they're like, we can't tell you exactly how that water is going to drain. We need another professional to tell us that.
Yeah.
So Spank does the regulations on whether or not your actual system functions the way it should. And then the Bureau des Études is the one who decides the size of your system based on your property and usage. And then the other thing that people always say is like, oh, there's only 2 of us.
Yeah.
And it's like, yes, but you bought a chateau.
Yeah.
So unfortunately,
You got
the company
chateau your houses.
yeah, it could
Yeah.
be, yeah. And so this back and forth with this client, he was very distressed.
It's because of the amount of money. It's a huge sum to add onto the,
or take off your property price.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he's like, I don't have that kind of money. I'm retired. I'm on a fixed income. And we were like, we totally understand. And you technically are not obligated to get this work done.
See, that would be my other question. Are you not?
So they have the warning, like you said, within 1 year, you're supposed to have your system sorted. And I've never met anyone who's been fined for not making their system conform.
No, but I'm aware of one of my French friends where they used to live. They've moved now, but their neighbour from England, their neighbour in France was from England, bought a property, and obviously all the diagnostics were done, and the Fosse didn't conform. Well, these people thought they were doing the right thing, and they were getting the Fosse done, and blah 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 blah, and my French friend was also then selling her property, so Spank came out to check her Fosse and everything, but actually visited the house next door with these English people because they knew that they'd been there before, and they wanted, and luckily these English people were actually trying to sort their Fosse out. However, this is another question that I'm going to ask you, but however, that they'd been round and what they'd done so far did not work the way that it needed to pass confirmation. So obviously Simon's a fully qualified guy to be able to do it. But can you do the labour? So you go out and say, Bricko, I don't know, buy a tank, come home, dig your hole, or hire a digger, do all of that work, get your mates round and do all that work.
Yeah.
And because people obviously want to save on labour costs, don't they?
Absolutely. You are, so that this is one of the major differences between like in the US and here. Maybe not everyone in the US, but where I come from, you have to have the certification to be able to install septic systems. Here, you can install your own septic system. And that is a situation where I would recommend get the Bureau des Études out, get them to show you, and they send you a map, and they send you an aerial map of where everything's supposed to go. They send you a side view so you can see the depths of each aggregate and stuff, and then the Spank technician comes out during the installation. So once you dig the hole, they come out, check the holes, like,
And you pay for them for every visit.
So the homeowner pays a set fee to have their dossier.
So like their plan.
Yeah. And so when you have initially, you have to submit a dossier with your plan and stuff. But literally all you have to do is get the Bureau des Études out, pay for that, copy everything directly off that paperwork into your dossier, submit both, and then then you make an appointment with the Spank technician to come out at periodic checks throughout the installation. They'll pour a bit of water down the hole. They check the fall on the pipe work and everything to make sure that it's spot on. Then they check again once you've covered it with dirt and stuff. It's a very funny thing because obviously once you've done a bunch, now they just know they're going to go and see. We've also been in situations where homeowners have started doing it and then they get
stuck.
Or they hire Simon just to do the digging with the machine, they'll pay a day rate or whatever for him to do the digging, but they do all of the installation themselves. And it's not that difficult, it's not a super complex thing when you're given all of the information on how to do it.
Okay, so somebody looking at buying a house where the Fosse doesn't conform, they could then get a quote from, say, a Simon to dig the right hole. They can pay for these people before they actually follow through on the purchase to come out, get a soil test done, get this other bureau to come out and go, well, this is the size of the tank you'd need.
Yeah.
This is how deep the hole needs to be. You know what I mean? And get a plan. So you have a price in mind before you even make your offer on a property.
Well, and that's what, getting a quote from a professional who just does it all the time, who knows what the materials are going to cost, knows any kind of eccentricities of the technicians you're working with, and then getting that money off your purchase price.
Yeah.
And then you could end up saving a load of money when you do move in, doing it yourself. Absolutely. But I would also caution against it in that it's really difficult when you get here to figure out how to get materials.
Or how to get the massive tank back to you.
Yeah, and how to get the tank in.
Connections. Like, who do you know? So actually, when I was in England and I was actually really overwhelmed about this whole like Fosse septic tank thing. And I was like, oh my God, have I bitten off more than I can chew? Because my level of understanding wasn't there. And actually, I managed to find a Facebook group. I can't remember what it was called now. I can find out, but it was like Brits in France, Fosse Septiques or something. You know what I mean? It was so basic. But it did what it said on the tin, because then I put like a copy of my report in, and then actually people did take the time, who either used to install tanks or know a little about them, would take the time to reply to me and say, actually, right, okay, this is the size. I think, I don't know, if I said a 7,000 litre for my main house.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. And then I was like, yeah, but I've got another one. And they're like, okay. And they talked about all the different sort of things. They were incredibly helpful. Obviously, you've got to be really careful when you go in those kind of Facebook groups or any kind of social group, or who you take advice from. So you're right. Like, obviously getting a quote and facts for any kind of situation from a professional is always going to save you money, time, heartache in the long run.
Yeah. Initially, when Simon started doing fosses, he spoke to the spank that's local to us and said, "Oh, can you recommend me?" And they went, "No, we can't," because it's like a corruption thing. They're like, "No, we can't recommend. We can't recommend you to other people." So estate agents, they can recommend you, and often like they'll get Simon to do quotes on properties when they're looking to get the sale instead of the owners doing it, things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's not the case necessarily for all spanks either. So there's some communes who do recommend a certain installer because that's the one that they work with or whatever. But at least where we live, it was, no, we don't have a list of installers that we recommend.
Yeah, like I do it.
Yeah, we just
if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
So if you were moving here and you were like, I don't know anybody, would you ask your estate agent, I guess, then for, painters, decorators, Fosse installers?
I mean, did you buy off a British estate agent, like an English
British,
agent?
but like,
yes,
so French
here.
Yeah, lived here a long time.
I think that's pretty common as well. Like the estate agents generally kind of pair you with your own culture, so we all have different buying habits and stuff, and they recognize that. So yeah, I mean, they're going to be integrated a lot more into the expat kind of communities if you're looking for expat workers and things. Obviously, it takes time, like any network, to build up and learn. I mean, we used the DVN. The DVN was a huge one.
Which is like the Drone Valley
Network. Well, so Anne Fitchie, who set it up, did it 16 years ago from nothing. Just a set of classifieds for free for any British people who live in the Drone Valley, which is enormous. She's now got more than 8,000 members in the group.
Best community, just line.
It's and
get to know
the number of times we've had emails forwarded onto us that were a recommendation when Simon used to advertise on there. Of Facebook groups.
Yeah.
Each community's got a Facebook group for expats. So wherever you live, you can find that, and there's recommendations on there. And people advertise on there as well. So even if you want to just take a punt, if they have the correct information, so legally to be able to advertise in France, you have to have a CRA number, which means you're registered.
It's like an English company house.
Yeah, exactly. And so as long as you're doing due diligence about that information, you can go to places like,
Your Marie,
Yeah.
and get like
exactly. Do
Like-
you know anyone?
go to Stefan,
Yeah.
and especially if you can keep it like, local, that's a really, really great thing.
Exactly.
But yeah, so when I moved here, Helen, my agent and Mike, they were incredible. They managed to find me so many different things that I needed done, and they're like, oh, okay, so and so does that, or so and so, you know what I mean? They had a list of people that they use constantly,
Exactly.
all the time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Fosse, it can be, quite a scary thing, Fosse tanks, if you don't know where to ask.
Yeah.
Nothing scary if you're fully armed with the information, but it's finding the right sources of information.
When you don't know or you can't find online or whatever, it becomes difficult. So I was like, why don't you phone the mairie of the commune? They will be able to contact them because they outsource that to this water board.
My experience, and obviously your experience with Fosse tanks, poo tanks, shit sticks, is quite
Terrible.
but if you do have any questions about Fosse tanks and things like that, obviously Vanessa is the queen of all things shit.
I do a lot of shit translated.
She knows, so do feel free to ask, and we'll help where we can.
Also, like a lot of the information through the French government, gouv.fr, a lot of that information about the laws and regulations is available. And they do have a lot of English
Yeah, they're quite good at that, aren't they?
pages. Yeah, so you can look it up because these are common issues that you would have as an English person moving here. So there is this information available. It's learning the lingo and learning, like we learned last episode with Stefan, it starts in the commune, and then it's the community of communes, and then it's the department, and then it
radiates out.
Yeah. So, even if it's a situation where you're looking to buy a property, your mayor will know that property. You can ask them what they know.
I think my takeaway from Stefan, because he was so incredible, like he is such a central point of knowledge. He's been there so long. He knows everybody.
Yeah.
He knows who to trust and who not to trust. So do use your Marie more and more, because you're never going to get better quality information than from your mayor.
I mean, there are bilingual-ish notaires as well, but you can pay a translator that specializes in property sales, and they will translate the entire thing as it goes.
And actually,
going through.
I think there's now like a lot of the times a notaire, if they are like bilingual, they will insist that you pay for a translator because they don't want the responsibility of you not understanding or going, well, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
Like, and try and have a get out clause. It's like, no, you pay for a translator. Now it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
It's fair enough.
And it's well worth it. And like, that's something I can recommend because it's another thing that's controlled by the government. So you can get a certified translator. There's a list provided by the government. We can put a link for that list in the podcast comments because those people have to have a certain qualification to do it. So all of the people on the list are recommendable.
But yeah, so I think we've covered the shit talk. If you need any more advice, just do give us a massage.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for all your messages and your comments.
Yeah, your support.
The support, because you know what? We were saying, like, it's crazy that we're only like 8 episodes in, and it feels like we're doing a bit longer though. But we haven't. Do you know what I mean? It's
2 months.
Yeah. But it's the amount of downloads and things that we're getting and views on YouTube and stuff. So please subscribe to YouTube, because you know what, every number counts, and every support or comment just makes such a difference. And the amount of messages that we've had privately just saying, it's really good, you're charismatic, do you know what I mean, your personality's just gel, you know what I mean, like get along, and everything's informative, but shits and giggles along shits and giggles along the way. So thank you so much. We appreciate you.
Yes. Like, subscribe, follow us on social media. Yeah, we are kind of everywhere. And nowhere at the same time, because the stealth. Thank you so much for joining us.
We'll see you on the next episode.
Au revoir.